Welcome, traveler. You have entered a realm of adventure. Prepare yourself for tales from beyond the dice.
Beyond the Dice is a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition actual play podcast set in a cyberpunk city called New Ettica. I'm your Dungeon Master Luke, and your players are...
Ben, I play Cortaine, the level 5 human fighter.
Peter, are we actually playing characters tonight? You'll find out.
Oh, I'm Travis. I play Little Moss sometimes.
Fuck, dude, where's the energy? You had so much energy before, and as soon as we start recording, you're like, I am a man.
My name is Travis.
Orc. Sometimes. Wait, hold on, are you a Cylon? Because you're a pretty bad Cylon, because we just figured it out.
Man, if I was a Cylon, you wouldn't know until the critical moment where you're firing nukes on your own ship, and then you're like, what the hell happened?
I've run out of nukes. I've been nuking all weekend. Yikes!
Oh.
Alright. I don't know what that means to you guys, but...
I don't know what that means to anyone.
Yeah.
I assume it's sexual.
Is it?
Really?
I don't
You
know.
assume that?
Oh.
Yeah, you know, You want me to explain it to the people at home?
Do you have
Nah,
radioactive seam?
No, I'm not like Spider-Man.
Spider-Man doesn't have... Actually, I don't know that one.
Yeah, he does.
I'm
There's
not sure.
there's a comic episode where Mary Jane gets cancer and dies because of his radioactive
Seed.
Seed.
His
Yeah.
spiderlings.
Yep. It's pretty
canon.
it's pretty grimdark. Hey.
Can he shoot it out of his hands as well?
No.
Oh,
No, but I've heard it's got the same consistency as the web.
Really?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. All right. So let's get to this episode. So, as all of our listeners know, season 1 has concluded. So we've decided to continue the podcast and not just finish up for a season. We are renewed.
Yeah.
But
we got the funding.
yeah, we got great funding right now. We got that good Maxi-Bon money. Actually, we're being sued. Actually, so.
Those mad Maxi Bond stacks.
Staxy bonds.
Oh, good.
So, we're not continuing with our storyline. We will be talking about character creation, not so much in depth of the characters that we're playing in the podcast, because we don't want to give too much away. We will talk about our inspirations and our processes in which we, dive into while we're creating characters. And I will talk a little bit about what I do as a DM when I ask my players to create characters for various games. And I am also a player in D&D, so I can also talk about that as well. Ben runs D&D, so he may have some insight into what a DM should be looking for or encouraging when the players are creating characters. So I haven't written any sort of dot points or anything like that down, but what we should start with is everyone roll a d20, and whoever gets the lowest begins, and I shall ask them a question.
You didn't say there was going to be dice in this episode.
Well, I thought the
Who
title
rocks
of
up
the
to D&D
show...
without it?
Just stretch over. Oh shit, a 5. Why was wrong?
I found my dice bag. Well, I don't think I
Ben.
need to roll.
Ben, why do you roll so poorly?
I don't know. Maybe I just want to talk.
Travis, 18.
Hold on.
Nah, cheating. Cheating.
Pick the lowest, you fool.
The
Yeah,
lowest.
disadvantage, motherfucker.
Where's my D20? There it is. It rolled a 7.
7.
Actually, that's a 1.
Peter starts. Okay. Peter, when creating Spigs, what was your inspiration for his overall aesthetics? Like the way that he looked in your head, the way that you describe him in the podcast, the way that you visualize him. What was that inspiration? What were you sort of lending from? If you lent from things, or what did you picture when, and why did you picture that when you created Spigs?
So my main aim, and I think is what every single person should do as when they pick a character is pick someone who's going to really piss off the DM so he never invites you back.
No, that doesn't. That's happened, but it's not so much the character; it was the player.
Oh yeah, I know. The story.
Whoa!
And no one on this podcast, okay? No one on this podcast.
Yeah, and now the true story about...
I think I know what you're talking about. There's a certain goblin. There was a goblin adventure.
A certain goblin adventure. Yes. Anyway, Peter, continue.
Oh, well, do you want me to talk about perhaps my original character before Spigs?
Oh, yeah, cool. Absolutely, go ahead.
So, after we have been playing D&D for, what, you reckon, like 8-10 years before we did Beyond the Dice? Or started Beyond the Dice?
Yeah, 10 years before we started it, for sure.
And after, you know, mucking around with just random characters, it came down to more what I wanted to play, what I felt comfortable playing, and what interests me in a character to play.
And is that like mechanically, or are you talking about their overall style and flavor?
That's a good question.
I think that's very dependent on the person. Like, there'd be people out there who are just like, hey, I want to be, you know, just be like killing everything. I want to be the person that gets every single kill, maxes out damage, and just smashes up, but has no...
The power
really
gamer.
Yeah, they don't really care about having a personality in the character that they play. They're just like, whatever, I'm just playing the game as the game. I'm not, you know, fueling my character and his backstory or anything.
Yeah, I thought that you could hide behind game mechanic a lot more in 4th edition than you could in 5th.
Yes.
So, like, it was always like, how many spaces can my character move during battle? I wish to load this move, and I'm going to perform this kind of thing. It was very rigid, whereas 5th edition kind of frees you up to role play if that's your preferred style. So, like, I didn't like 4th as much as 5th for that very reason.
Yep, cool. I sort of agree. 4th's cool in the way that it's kind of like a big ongoing board game that lasts forever and ever and ever until nobody can play anymore until 5th edition comes out. But I much prefer the style of 5th edition that we have been playing both in Ben's game and in the game that I run, where it's more like, yeah, there are battle rules and we have fights and we have to follow those rules, but there is a lot of role play. You know, there'll be entire nights where, you know, we won't attack as such. It'll be a lot of sort of discussion between characters and talking to NPCs and then rolling like skill checks and stuff like that to flavor up events that happen. And describing what happens when we, instead of just going, I roll athletics, oh sick, I got a fucking 21. Oh yeah, you want to describe your role. What do you do with athletics that makes this scene progress or whatever?
But also, like, what helps to reflect the number that you roll on the dice. So if you roll a 1, it's like, I went to kung fu kick someone, but then my leg fell off. You know, like...
Or your hand gets blown off.
Oh yeah, that's true.
You forgot you had like that prosthetic, like you were playing around with that, and you kicked with the wrong leg.
Yeah.
You just flew off and hit them in the face instead.
That would be above a 1, I guess.
So,
But Luke,
yeah.
how do you as the DM balance out when a character's refusing to flavor things for you, but you want to keep the story going?
Sometimes if people aren't flavoring, I will. I tend to do it anyway. Like, someone describes how they attack the creature. I like to describe how that creature reacts, or the enemy, how the enemy reacts, or whatever. If they're not really role playing or describing their moves or whatnot, or if they're just discussing the situation as players rather than the characters, I'll sometimes just be like, hey, fucking roleplay it. Say it as the character. Don't say it as you. have this discussion in character. Go. And that's okay to do. Like telling your players to have that discussion in character can be a little, I guess, rough for some people. They're not sure how they would have a conversation as a woodland elf with a dragonborn paladin. Like how do they do that? But the more you do it, the better you get at it. And I think it really the game will benefit from it when you do that. So I would.
Is that part of like when we were sort of putting the team together to do the podcast? Like, is that what you envisaged out of like the people that you sort of approached to do it? Like people that could role play, or was it sort of part role play, part character creation? Like, what was your thinking behind that?
Yeah, my major thing was asking people to do this that I knew were pretty comfortable in picking a character and sort of staying true to that character.
Right.
And then obviously advancing or changing, growing, evolving as, a person does, and playing that out in the story. People that can do that. And like playing with you guys for such a long time, you're playing in Ben's game and running D&D for you guys for such a long time, and other people obviously as well, that was like a big factor for me. Peter's previous character, not the character he currently plays in our normal campaign, but the character before that, Tori, he changed. He sort of changed over time, and there was a lot of Facebook messages that we sent back and forth, and even little roleplay episodes away from everyone else between sessions that sort of built his character and saw his character evolve. So that's also like a cool thing that we've always done, and I would suggest if the players are open to it and the DM's open to it, even having little messages and talking to the players about their characters between things if it's necessary.
You know the secret behind why I started playing with Tori? So Tori was like this character. He was a little half-elf. Half-elf? He was a half-elf. He was a little half-elf like assassin. And the original concept I wanted to do was to be better than our friend Andy and his previous character that he made.
What that was your underlying premise?
Yeah. That was like, you know what? All he did the previous campaign was sit there and just shoot an arrow, and I'm like, oh no, he was a thief, and he was just like he's just stealing stuff, and then, so I'm like, you know what? I think I can play like a more interesting character, and so I picked that one.
I didn't realise your whole character was a massive middle finger to our friend.
Yeah.
If I knew that,
yeah.
Wait, you didn't know that either, Luke?
No, I like Peter pitched Tori to me, and he like had this dark background and this sort of not twisted, but like he had this sort of I can say he's probably he had this twisted life and these urges to kill because he was brought up by like ruthless assassins, and he was just sort of like a 16-year-old boy or whatever. But I never knew that it was about shitting on Reed, which is Andy's old character.
That was the original concept, and then like it birthed this amazing character with so much like world creation.
Amazing to you.
Well, no, Tori was really, really awesome. It's just nobody got to see it because you all fucking failed. You failed. So
yeah,
there was a magic sword that a big evil snake thing was hissing at and wouldn't go near. And the snake was fucking everyone up. This Naga was just destroying everyone. And there were all these hints throughout the whole thing that this snake did not like this magic sword that was stuck in the stone. And it wasn't until one of the players died that somebody pulled free the sword and decided to use it, which was the Naga's weakness, of course. Yeah, that was good fun. That was so funny and so sad at the same time.
Yeah, poor Tori.
So that was a massive like flip off of Reed,
Yeah.
the rogue character.
Yeah.
I made Reed. He was the. I actually built the character.
Oh yeah, because Andy was like wasn't sure what to make.
Because Andy was too lazy to make his own, so I just did a cookie cutter kind of half elf,
Halfling?
half elf.
halfling rogue, because the racial combined with the class was considered favourable.
You power gamed for Andy.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he was. He just played this single trope the entire time, which was I like gold.
Although, that's true, golden women. But then by the end of it,
Golden women.
his character became almost like the moral compass for you guys.
Like the anti-moral compass. Well, that's because
No.
I had no moral compass by the end of it.
If you really think about it, Darius, which is Ben's old character, was very like, fuck you all, fuck magic, I'm gonna fucking destroy all the bad magic shit. And he was like,
It was awesome.
he was amazing,
Freaking
but
awesome. I love that guy.
he went from like he was like the one in the group that if he said no, it was no. But Reed was the driving force of being like, look, we've got to try and save the world, basically.
And he put himself in there, became the leader.
Yeah, that's true.
Basically.
Anyway, let's go to Travis.
Just on that.
What do you do when you're creating
sorry.
characters?
Sorry,
Before
Peter
we
wants
do
to interrupt.
I want to interrupt.
All right, go interrupt.
All right. So, but we're not saying that it's bad to just power game and not have like a cool like character, but like that's the choices you make whether you want to play D&D as a board game in a sense, or you want to make a really cool character. Like you choose how you want to play it, and maybe not as interesting to everyone else because your character just does the same stuff. But if that's your jam, that's your jam.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but a lot of the time, like you could start off with a cookie cutter max min kind of character, and then find your voice and find your character after you've had your initial couple of battles and things like that, like first couple of scenarios.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's true.
Once you get into the groove of D&D.
Yeah, that's what
Also-
Darius was. Darius, his backstory was not really fleshed out. I just picked him because mechanically I quite liked him.
Yeah.
Right. And then built it around that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Also, like for those new to RPGs and D&D, should we explain what a min-max character means?
Just the idea that you load your stats so that you're very strong in certain areas, but because of the way that when you build a character, you're given a finite number of points, like you can't be maxed in all areas, so you have to make compromises in other places. So you can either kind of go for a balanced build where you have equal distribution across a number of areas, but you're not particularly strong in any one, or you pick 2 or sometimes 3, depending on how you create your character, where you are very highly proficient.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how did you min-max Reed, for example?
Look, he's a rogue, so you max like dexterity. Or was it agility in 4th edition?
No,
I
it was
forget.
Dex. It was Dex.
It was dexterity? Yep. So dexterity, and I think then, putting bonuses in things like stealth and sleight of hand or whatever it was. But just things that complement, the character class. So if you're a barbarian, for example, you'd max out on strength.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not too focused upon flavoursome choices. It's more just what is the best thing for the kind of class and character that I am.
Yeah, it's like you might get a choice between doing like, oh, here, you get to do an extra D12 damage and that's it. Or you can do this thing where when you hit an enemy near an ally, you can move that ally a certain amount of squares or feet or whatever, and they get +1 to AC. And you're like, I don't give a fuck about my allies. I just want to kill things as the barbarian, so I'm going to choose the D12 damage.
Yeah.
So, and that's sort of min-maxing.
Whereas there's a completely opposite way to go about building a character, which is you kind of go, all right, I'm going to have a guy that is extremely simple, but he has a heart of gold. And it doesn't matter what class he is, but you know that his intelligence is going to be low when you're building a character, so you do low intel.
Yeah.
So that's just like the complete opposite way of looking at it.
Yeah, you choose what type of character, whether it is like what you say, like a simpleton, and it doesn't matter. Yeah, it drives. No matter about min-maxing, it drives how you build the character around the concept, what type of character you like to play. I was just going to say, like, example, if you're just playing D&D as a game, usually you wouldn't want, like, typically you wouldn't want to play, like, a bard, for example, or a cleric.
Just as a general rule. You'd never play a bard.
So Peter's like, #fuck bards.
Yeah, pretty much. And clerics. Like, no one wants to be the healer. Every single time I've ever...
I don't mind
fair.
being a healer.
No,
Yeah, but you don't, like, you're never gonna get the satisfaction of, like, oh, I got that kill, if that's what you like, if you're gonna pick a cleric.
Speak for yourself, Pete. I get satisfaction out of helping people. I don't know about you.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, no, you're not as, like, if you're just like, hey, who got the most kills tonight? Oh, I'm the cleric.
You're not the
my D4 damage.
You're not the hero. You're not like the amazing warrior getting all the kills. Like you're not the rock star of the party.
Yeah.
Unless you're a bard.
But at the end of the day, you're probably the one that's going to last the longest.
Yeah.
Survive.
Yeah. But then playing those characters, they might have the most. You could build them as having the most flavor and backstory and like character. And then you can still do it that way instead of
But
trying
then
to
you're
go min-max
bloody
damage.
useless in a battle.
Yeah. All right, Trav.
Oh yeah, what was the question?
So when you're creating characters, we can use Little Moss as an example, or Bran, or Denim. What are the steps you take when I come to you and I say, hey, we're going to be playing this game, do you want in? And you're like, yep. And I'm like, all right, cool, create a character, and this is the setting and the feel of the game that we're playing. What are the first few steps that you take in creating that character?
Honestly, like, I read a lot of sci-fi and a lot of fantasy, and along the way, certain characters, whether they be major or minor, like really stick in your head, and I usually use that as like a touchstone of inspiration. So, for example, with Denim, he was a human. Gosh, I forget his class. It was irrelevant.
A ranger.
A ranger, but he dual wielded.
Yeah, he was a two-weapon fighting ranger.
And to flavour him, it was about, he was a pirate, but he was also an orphan that had been brought up on a pirate ship. But he was built around the character of Aemon Trask from...
Magician.
Yeah, from the Magician trilogy. That kind of boss pirate that was ultimately out for himself, but kind of had a heart of gold as well to those that he really cared about. So that became, I suppose, the driving thing that brought Denim together, and it had to change significantly based on when we did some world building. Like, it turned into a low magic universe. There had to be a plausible explanation for me to be in the city at a given time. It means I couldn't have a certain level of prestige that I would have liked initially, because I had to be sort of unknown. So I was kind of like a raw version of what I thought Aemon Trask would have been like at a young age.
Yeah.
And then, I went off in a different direction completely.
But that happened
started
due to actually playing that character, right?
Yeah, and he made choices and then had to live by the consequences of those actions. But that's how I kind of went about it initially. I think about either people in my life or characters that I have an affinity with and that I'd like to explore the mindset of more and then use that to play around. That's my sandbox.
Yep, awesome. And
When you say he changed, did you say he changed out of denim into jeans? Or?
He went
jeans
double
are
denim. He went double denim.
Whew, denim jeans and denim jacket. Golly gosh. What about you, Ben? What's your process when you're creating a character? Whether that can be for, as an NPC character because you run D&D, or that can be focused towards a player character. I guess choose.
Yeah. A lot of the time and this is what I enjoy doing in my in the D&D campaign that you're in, is running characters or creating characters that I can explore some kind of, what's the word? Not necessarily morale, just a different way of perceiving the world. So Darius was very much a every man is an island kind of, but also anti-magic because it's kind of cheating kind of character, and that was really interesting. And Cortaine, no spoilers of course, but Cortaine is kind of that more of that perhaps anti-hero. He's kind of I built a character that was if my character's focus is so much on justice without necessarily mercy, what kind of character would that create?
A jerk.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what you'd say, but I'd say it's a pretty just character. Which is, when you get into situations where he will just end up just executing hostages because he thinks they're guilty. Which they were, obviously.
So you can say that your character choices, you kind of did say it before, are based on how you would see particular parts of society or the world in a view that's different to your own.
Yeah, I just want to kind of see if I put the emphasis on a particular, justice and mercy. If I instead put the emphasis really hard on justice, which is kind of where Cortaine is, then how does that influence a character? For Darius, it was the dual kind of anti-magic, but also kind of the consummate isolation woodsman, that you can only rely on yourself. And also he was a pretty boss, Warden, which was an awesome class from 4th edition.
Yeah.
So are you saying that you look at sort of different elements of the moral spectrum?
Yeah, kind of.
And then skew them one way or the other just to sort of see how that affects social interactions and moral choices.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is basically when I play D&D, my friends are guinea pigs.
Yeah. Well, I can kind of see that now that you say it, it's something that I'd been thinking about playing in your campaigns when you give us choices that don't necessarily benefit. Well, the choices we make don't necessarily benefit the the population of wherever we are. Just recently, one of the characters basically said to a giant tree spirit, you can have this entire country if you help us defeat this great evil. And the tree spirit was like, yeah, cool, sure. And my character, upon finding some and besting some warriors of this evil army, it was like, look, you guys are just normal people forced into this situation. If you leave this territory and don't come back and don't join the armies of the evil once again, I promise we won't kill the innocent, and we'll do as much as we can to protect your people, the women and children and the old and infirmed that are behind the walls of your city. We won't kill them. The next minute, the big tree spirit rolls in and starts basically shanking everyone with tree branches. And it's their choices choices we made sort of snowballed into this. It's something that we might have said, no, tree spirit, you're not having the land, and things would have turned out differently.
Yeah,
but it's Yeah, it's like those little things of, what are we going to do with these refugees that are coming in, and where are we going next? What are we going to do? Ben always seems to find some sort of ethical dilemma for us to figure out, which is really good and fun for our characters and the way that we role play it. Because you've got the paladin who's really like down the line, no, we've got to do good, and then you've got other characters that are like, we have to save the world no matter what, and then they get into not conflict, but they get into discussions about their two viewpoints.
Yeah, and I mean in that campaign, which will be foreign to Travis and Peter, the way that it's going now with the plot, the main decisions that the group is coming to is not necessarily a good or evil one. It's more of a like, how do we define the way that we want to live? Do we want to open the world up to the heavens and to the kind of celestial realms, or do we want to just isolate ourselves and let all the mortal races just not be interfered with? I try not necessarily, like, for the large stories, this is a bit off topic for character creation, but try not to just have like you do the obviously good or the obviously bad thing.
That's railroading as a DM, and I think that's where the real enjoyment for D&D comes in terms of being a character rather than being a dungeon master, is feeling like you have a legitimate choice to make and doing what you think your character would do. Not doing what, Travis would do, but as Little Moss, whether I like it or not, what would I do? Because I've come up against that decision many times as my character, and it very rarely ends well for me. But that's exactly the point. Like, I want to be given a real choice to make. I want it to have consequences, and I want to see how it plays out as a result.
Yeah.
And another character. This is kind of moving back to character creation. Like the character I'm playing currently, called Shadow, basically is his name. It's not really his name. Like, that's a lie. But that was kind of the purpose. Is like, how would a character work? How could I play a character who basically lied all the time, like never told the truth? If any of you guys have seen
Just be yourself.
Yeah, and this does come yeah, basically. And this comes into what you were talking about earlier, Trav, that sometimes there are just characters from film and literature that I really like. And this latest character I'm playing is very much based upon Garrick from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, whose idea is lying is just like any other art, and you need to practice continually to get good at it. And why would you lie why would you tell the truth when a lie could do? That's kind of how I played that character, and that's been very fun.
Yeah, that was a when you pitched me that, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be good. I can't wait until Andy starts going, hold on a second. You told me something different last time."
Yeah, and that's very fun from a player perspective, is how myself, there's all the, because I'm lying all the time, I need to kind of keep a consistent narrative. Yeah, that's been very fun.
Yeah. So, what's another thing that we do? Like, taking on, like characters that inspire us, or people that inspire us from different medias, like books and movies and TV shows. I definitely do it as well. I think when I create characters, this is player characters, I tend to look at it depends on what the DM sets for me as the setting and the theme and all that sort of thing, right? So when I created my first character with Ben's current campaign, there was only a certain amount of magic characters that could be, or magic classes that could be selected because of being such a low magic setting. And so I went with the Ranger, and we went with basically a non-magical one. And I thought of this character that was basically a dragonborn, but not so much as people generally think of them, the big, bulky, dragon-like creatures. My thought of this dragonborn ranger was that of, or being very similar to a lizard man. So more slender and tall rather than thick and bulky. He has a tail because he's from the swamps. So he's kind of like a lizard crocodile version of what a dragonborn would be. And then the swamps, sort of, I was thinking of, what sort of civilizations would be in the swamp. So, I would talk to Ben and we sort of came to a common ground that the swamps could be like an Aztec sort of civilization. And the Dragonborn that lived there were either remnants of that civilization or just creatures that moved in and started living amongst ruins and mangrove trees and all this sort of stuff. And so I guess the way that I first create characters is I visualize them. So, I had chosen that the character's going to be like a Dragonborn that's more lizard-like. So I just pictured this really tall, slender, sort of lizard man dude, and I absolutely love the dinosaur from Jurassic Park that has the frill neck. I think it's the Diaphragmodon or something. But that was the first image that came into my head when I went slender Dragonborn swamp, was this frilled-necked Dragonborn. And so there was this tall, frilled-necked Dragonborn that had a spear because they were tribal people, loincloth, and then I started to build the flavor around him that his people have bones all over their clothes, and that they move in so stealthily and attack other tribes, so much so that the bones don't rattle when they're sneaking in. That's how good they are at attacking from the darkness.
So would you say that that's more of a collaborative approach, like with your DM when you're world building, and allow that to dictate choices that are made as you build?
Yeah, Ben gave me heaps of space to create the character, but my thing as a player, and I guess that probably comes from being a DM, is like, all right, Ben, I'm playing in your world. This is the story that you're presenting us, and we're going to make choices in, and things are going to happen. What are some, I guess, like, what in your vision of your world exists? I am from the swamps, so what is in the swamps? Or, for example, my current character that I'm playing now is an elf warlock from a Japanese/Chinese based empire. And when I was creating him, I bombarded Ben with so many questions, like what is the government system like? How, the emperor, when is he chosen to be an emperor? Is he born to it? Has he always been there? Is he seen as a god? Like, all of these things, I just bam, 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 asked questions, and it was probably really annoying for him to answer on Facebook Messenger, because I would send like 12 in a row and he would have to answer them in some sort of fashion that would make sense to me.
But there's some to and fro there, because your questions help the DM to clarify what he populates his own world with. Like, I bet before you asked a question like that, he had not considered what the swamps were like.
Oh yeah,
because it wasn't relevant to the the meta of what's happening in Ben's D&D universe. But in the process of asking those questions, it's like there's a bit of creativity from the DM as well to kind of go, what does a consistent swamp ecosystem look like in my universe?
Yeah, you're certainly right, Trav. And that is what happened. The character was, Luke was making the character when the world was in its infancy, and so at that point it was quite easy to then be like, okay, cool, like I'll put
to make things up.
Yeah, exactly, like to fit it in and have a consistent world.
Yeah. Sorry, Luke, you were saying? I interrupted.
I know. I think it was just like creating a character. I like to find out the rules, right? Because I don't want to be going into, like, I don't want to rock up to D&D and Ben trusts me enough to create a character. But if I rock up and he's like, all right, you guys are all bodyguards of a prince in this land, and I come and I'm like, it's medieval-based sort of fantasy, Tolkien-esque story, Tolkien-esque fantasy, and I'm like, all right, cool. I have 2 handguns and a fucking laser beam helmet. You know, I've got guns and I can shoot laser beams. You know, it doesn't fit the story. And I like to make sure that I don't shock, not so much surprise, but I don't want to shock anyone at the table when I bring a character.
You should do up your fly.
Yeah, absolutely. I should tuck it back in. Sorry, guys, hold on.
And sometimes there is more of a like the DM will be more of a block, or I mean, not saying they can't play that character, but ask them to potentially rethink it, because sometimes players do come with the character with such a grandiose sense of story that's like, why you know, we're starting at level 1, why have you got, you know, a whole epic backstory that is, you know, I've been doing all this stuff for 20 years and I'm the, you know, exiled prince of so and so, and
I'm a level 1.
Exactly,
and
yeah.
I've slayed 37 dragons.
Yeah, basically.
That's why I said I had to revise the denim character, because, you know, the end goal was to become like this sort of epic pirate. But what does that look like in its infancy? Because, you know, we're of the criminal underclass in, you know, a big city. We're living in poverty, essentially, and the two don't meld. You know, you're not going to be a famous pirate and be sitting around in the slums waiting for some low mercenary level work. So how do you make that work? It has to be in consultation with the DM. And because I'll come up with ridiculous stuff. Like, Lucas had to rein me in so many times and just be like, nope. And that's fine, because I'm often trying to shove like a square peg in a round hole. Yeah. But because I'm so committed to a particular like stupid idea. Yeah. But he's more gracious than that. He doesn't say no. He just sort of molds it into something that could work within the scenario that he's trying to create.
I always think about Denim's pets that fucking just died or he forgot along the way.
That's because I had
more than one pet.
I had a lynx.
Wait. First, remember he had the dog.
Yeah.
And he would just forget about it, and then
he got crushed.
Yeah, and then he took it into battle for the first time.
Got crushed by a bugbear.
He got murdered by a bugbear.
That was really funny.
It was so sad. I felt so sad doing that as a DM.
You're a dog killer.
No. I think another thing that I like to do as a DM when my players are creating characters is a system that I call like the drawback system or the flaw system. So 5th edition has their own things where they've got, hey, these are 3 bonds that I will never steal a juice box from a child. I will never sell this family heirloom, and I will always help the innocent. Like those bonds that you create. And then you might have flaws like, my character is always
illiterate. That was the worst decision I've ever made.
Yeah. Also, yeah. You know, there are the ones that you can get from the player's handbook, and you can go with that system. But I like to push it a little more because I feel like it creates more flavor and more of an environment to create a character that feels real. So what I do is I tell everyone to go to this webpage, and if you just Google Connor's Campaigns, CONNORS CAMPAIGNS. It looks like it's been like a DM who's put together all of this stuff for all different types of games, and he's got this thing called the drawbacks, and they work for almost any RPG system. And it's a massive list of flaws that you can introduce to your character. There are minor and there are major. And so what I say to my characters is choose a maximum of 3 majors and a minimum of 1 or 2 minors. And if you choose majors, you get rewarded with a feat. And if you choose minors, you get rewarded with a proficiency of some sort. So for example, if you decide that you're going to take the minor drawback of bleeder, which means you bleed easier than others. Maybe your blood doesn't clot properly or whatnot. You choose it as a minor. You are vulnerable to slashing damage, but you get to choose a proficiency. So I might say to that character, think of what your character might be good at, or might have so that that might have occurred in their past that will give them an extra proficiency. So they might go, all right, lock picking. I wasn't always the best thief, like a cutthroat thief, but I was always good at picking locks. So they choose the proficiency in sleight of hand or something. And if they choose a major, they choose a feat. So, for example, if they choose the major blind or one-eyed, they might have disadvantage on perception checks and all that sort of thing. And it can be pretty hard for the character to deal with in the game, and it'll come up in the story that they've got one eye or they're partially blind. But they get a feat which will sort of offset that, because then they might choose something that will boost their character and create some more flavor for their class. But if you do it too much, you can have a character that is literally a glass cannon. They'll be able to do all this cool shit, but if they are hit once, they might die.
I found that hugely helpful as a player to have the feats and flaws system. One, because it changes your stats as a character. Like the feats and flaws will be like, let's say, for example, you're one-eyed. Your passive perception is -10 or something like that. Because it's one thing to flavor that by kind of being like, oh, my glass eye is always popping out. And it's another thing to actually be punished in a mechanical way during the game. Like, it's like, make a passive perception check. You have to do your roll and then you have to -10 from it. So it can make a big difference both mechanically and from a character point of view.
Yeah. A lot of D&D groups are murder hobos. These groups.
Whoa! I find that offensive.
It's like, I am not a hobo.
They don't murder hobos, but they're hobos who end up murdering people. Is that what you're talking about, Luke?
Yeah. That's like the typical D&D trope. That is like, most D&D groups are a bunch of people that don't have a home, that carry everything on their back, and they go around and just fucking kill everyone. Whether it's in a tavern or a dungeon or a castle, they just kill everyone.
Spigs has a home.
Yeah, I'm not talking about our group. Our group's a little bit different. But I mean, like most D&D groups. And, there's always that person that's going like, I'm going to create a crazy character. My character is going to be literally mad. He's going to be a mad dude. He's going to be crazy, wild. They can say that, and they can just basically, in a normal game of D&D, they just choose whatever they fucking want to do 1 minute and do something completely opposite the next and try and get all the lols.
Chaotic anything, and it's like, I just get to do what I want when I want.
Yeah. So if a player said that to me, I would go, all right, I would like you to look at the drawbacks and have a look at mad / unstable. So, for an example, the effects of that is this is ongoing for their character until they decide their madness or instability has gone away for some reason. They roll a random flaw from the indefinite madness table in the Dungeon Master's Guide, page 260. They can try to resist the urge of the affliction. They can make wisdom saving throws to do so. But they usually have disadvantage if they're saying that they're extra crazy or whatever. This sort of gives it some more flavor. So that instead of just going, I'm going to grab this chair and smash it over this child's head, and then I'm going to go and stab the barmaid and steal all the beer, there is a little more to the mechanics and the flavor of what is going on with that character, instead of them just rolling up this weird, just I'll do whatever I want character. There are some things that they have to abide by.
It's like example, like why this character keeps taking drugs.
Yeah. Yep.
What's happening in his background of his story?
Yeah.
Or does he just wants to take?
We all just thought
Yeah.
you want to take drugs, Peter. None of us thought Tori had any deeper backstory. And yeah.
I wrote a tome for Tori,
Yeah.
Makes it feel even worse
and
than
he
he
was
just
put
died.
under 6 feet under.
That's true. Yeah, so that's one thing I like to do. Another thing I really suggest everyone to do is when they're creating characters, go on Pinterest. If you haven't heard of it, it's a cool site where people upload heaps of pictures and images and make like mood boards and stuff like that. I do it as a DM. I've done it for the podcast. I've done it for my normal D&D games, even for my own haircuts and stuff. And I suggest searching up. If you create a character and you want to go for orc, bard, or dragonborn.
No one chooses bard.
Say that what?
No one likes Bard.
Hey, Griff was a bard.
Has he been back?
That's because of you guys. No, I'm kidding.
He's like, I don't want to play with them no more.
I don't want to play with him no more. No, or, if you're choosing, like, I want to be a kobold paladin, I suggest going on to Pinterest and searching up the combination of those classes and races and that sort of thing, and checking out the images that come up, because it can really inspire you to go, oh, this little kobold paladin has, like, his all of his armor is not like a shining paladin armor like everyone would expect. It's made out of all pots and pans and stuff, because of course he's a kobold, and he has like a rat on his shoulder. Is that his god? And then you might change your character to be this kobold that believes this giant rat that follows them around is actually their god or something. We can create a whole new perception you have on your first choice. So I always suggest to have a look on Pinterest and find images that you like and send them to me, so I have an idea of what flavor and aesthetic you're going for your character.
Yeah, it also helps to concretize what is otherwise an abstract concept.
Yeah.
It's kind of... It's like when nerds get together and discuss a fantasy novel. They've got two opposing images in their head of what a particular character looks like. And, if you got them both to draw them, they'd be completely different. And I think that's kind of what takes it out of the realm of the hypothetical and makes it something a bit more real.
I think...
So when you came up with the name as well for Little Moss, were you like Little John? Anyone?
No, that's one thing that I pushed back on, actually, with Trav's character. Because his first pitch to me was like his pitch was like, I want to play an orc, like, or a half orc that like this huge character that like punches people, so a monk or whatever. And then he sent a picture of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, that famous picture of him in the acid wash jeans and the turtleneck with the chain and the bum bag. He sent that to me and said, "This but orc," right? And I was like, I'm sold. 100% perfect. Love it. Amazing. And then we were talking about stuff, and he said he wants to name him Tiny. And now that is always a trope that's done with big dudes.
And Luke hated it.
I was like, look, I get the trope. I know we're going for like this 80s feel, and that's a big thing. Oh, there's Tiny. And he's like, oh, he must be a small guy. No, he's not. He's a big dude. And I was like, all right, let's create something a little more unique. And we were talking about we were talking about Tiny's background and his backstory and the things that might happen. And he's a monk, so he's trained in martial arts and all that sort of thing. And after some conversation, which we won't get into now because it might sort of ruin things for the story. But Little Moss, the name came up, and
you try to get rid of the little.
No.
That happens.
No, I think that was like the way that it made sense, and the way that it does make sense in his background is absolutely perfect. It's and it works well because Little Moss in the story, as we found out, he's only 16. Like, he's a kid. So, is that where the little part comes from, or is the little
We all know what the
somewhere
little part
else
comes from.
I was waiting for someone to jump
Ben
on
self-esteem.
that.
No one wants to jump on that.
Line, hook, and sinker. And yeah, so like that's something that I sort of pushed back on, but not in a way of like it's shit, you change it. I was like, look, it's an overdone trope. I like the idea. I want to see where we can take this, because I think we can find something a little more unique and better than just simply tiny. And when we came, well, when Trav came out with Little Moss, the name Little Moss, I was like, dude, that is so good. Like, it's odd, and it's unique, and
it also sparked some creativity as well. Like once the name came out, like all of the associated puns and catchphrases and things like that just flowed naturally. So
yeah,
it kind of helped.
Like the
Little Moss has a catchphrase.
Hi, I'm Little Moss, but you can call me Moss, and everyone's like, hey, Little Moss.
Yeah,
like that came out of just that name. But if it was tiny, like you wouldn't have had that joke. There could have been some other jokes and puns that could have come out of it. But that thing is just great. Yeah. What else? Or was anybody want to talk about something to do with creating their characters on the podcast, like what their inspirations were, or what choices they made along the way for their characters? Because that's another important one as well. It's the choices that you make.
I think part of the fun for the listener is in trying to pick what's wrong with us. You know what I mean? Like
social disorder wise?
Well, just as in like why? Like there's obviously some kind of cohesive narrative going on in the mind of the player. But you've kind of got to pick it. It's like, why does Moss keep making the choices that he makes? And I have a friend at my previous workplace that was a listener and stuff, and he would debate with me about like what the choices that I'd made, or like, why did you do that? You're an idiot. And I'm like, a gentleman never tells. So I'm like, I don't want to peel back the veil too much and show you what's lurking beneath.
Yeah.
Is it a drunk monkey at a typewriter? Is that
essentially? It's not 1,000 monkeys at 1,000 typewriters. It's just one drunk monkey trying to type, and he's not even hitting the keyboard.
Oh, good. Yeah, I think talking about creating a character in the clinical sense, going through the handbook and reading it out, that's just like anybody can do that. I think it's really important to talk about the flavor behind it. So I guess like my advice for creating a character from a DM's point of view is always find something familiar. For example, if you're going to play a modern setting and you're like, all right, I want to choose a scientist that knows everything about chemistry and stuff like that. If you know everything or most of everything or a lot of things about chemistry, that's great, because you can pull from that space and you can role play in a more effective way, rather than being like, if I pour lemonade into Coca-Cola, it tastes bad. That's like, that's the level of chemistry that I understand. So I don't think I could role play a chemist sort of character very well, in the sense of spitting out knowledge and information that pertains to that character's profession. So I would say pick something familiar to you. If it's a fantasy setting, try and turn the perception of that race or class on its head a little bit. So if you choose an elf, maybe try something different
It's like don't be distant and aloof.
Yeah, or don't be like, the forest is where I must reside. Nobody touch a leaf. Try something a little different.
Why all the same for Andy's characters this recording?
That's what Andy does for everything.
But I mean, like, have a look at The Witcher, right? The elves in The Witcher, they're not typical elves. They're like, the way that they've done elves is pretty cool. So yeah, have a look at that, or choose a way to take your class and race and bend it so it's a little unique from what is usually played. Because then that way, when you do meet an elf that is a tree hugging elf, and you're completely different, you're like a contrast to it, there will be some dialogue and some flavor between that elf NPC and your character. Also, look at the drawbacks, Connor's campaigns. Google that, have a look at that, and talk to your DM about including that in your character to give them more flavor, and
have fun.
Yeah, I would say go hard or go home.
I think that's exactly it. Like, I have played a serious character, and at times it can be like almost burdensome. Like, I don't like being evil all the time. So
what? You were evil the whole time, and you were backing us out
the whole time. So playing something that's a bit light and easy, like a little moss, like I really have fun doing that. Like, I don't have to second guess myself. I don't have to do something that's entirely contrary to my own nature. I just get to roll out little moss and have fun.
And run out of a hospital stealing cereal.
Yeah. So don't try to go too grim dark, because after a while it'll get a bit sour. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Like, I think that it saps your own fun, really. Like, there needs to be it's almost counter. Like, think about what it is to be a human being. Like, You're not just all evil all the time. Like, there's good and bad in everybody.
Yeah, you might be a cannibal, but you also like to cuddle puppies.
Yeah, before you eat them.
But you're not a puppy. You're not a cannibal if you eat puppies.
Well, you can still be a cannibal
if you eat puppies.
If you eat puppies, like, it's not exclusive.
Are you guys saying cannibals or accountable?
Cannibals. Like people that eat humans. Anyway, what if you were a dog that ate puppies? Then you'd be a cannibal.
What if you're a werewolf that eats wolves? What's that? So are werewolves also cannibals because they eat humans?
Ooh.
Okay, let's. Oh wait. That's for another podcast. Okay.
But as in, like, don't be too singularly faceted. Like, don't just be I'm the evil guy, because then there's nothing to it. Like, you're just all evil all the time. It's not fun for you. Every decision you make is going to be predictable.
Yeah.
So
basically, don't. As much as we fucking love him, and as much as I love him, don't make fantasy Batman.
Right.
Yeah? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, there just needs to be some conflict, like, within yourself, because that's what it is to be human, and so that's what creates believable characters.
Yeah. What about a piece of advice from you, Peter?
Piece of advice. I think start with something that you want to play that seems fun, interesting, and then let the creativity build around that central idea.
Yeah, that's very good. Yep. And Ben, what do you reckon? What's your little advice for players creating characters?
I think it really depends. Play something that will interest you, and whether that's like an actual background and that's the personality that really interests you, then that's great. If you really just like the idea of the mechanics, then that's fine too. You don't need to come to a character knowing everything about their backstory, how they respond to every situation. Like, you can just play a character and then just let it develop throughout the campaign.
Yeah, that's also like a really good thing to do for a DM, right? You have a backstory, you have stuff that your party knows, or you might tell your party. Then you have some stuff that is a secret from your party that only your character and the DM knows. And then it's always good to choose a secret that you as a player don't know, and gives the DM some room to move and add your backstory in with this little secret.
Yeah, and if you end up thinking that, you know, I'm going to play this character, you spend so much time making it, or, you know, it's what the rest of the party wants, say, especially when you're trying to pick roles and classes to, you know, flesh it out and not just have, you know, no tank or whatever, then you want to kind of tailor your group that way. You need to pick something that you want to play, because if you don't want to play it, you don't want to be at D&D, and if you don't want to be at D&D, everyone is going to know that you don't want to be there.
Yeah, you can see it in just the way they sit,
the way
that they participate, the way that they pay attention.
Yeah, the number of times they get their phone out. Like it's clear. If you don't want to be at D&D, you don't like the character you're playing. Like, why are you playing?
Yeah, and you know what? If you're like a couple months into a game and you're like, this character, like, I don't feel like they're really going anywhere, talk to your DM and say, look, I think it's time for this character to move on. If you've got a rogue who is stealing a whole bunch of stuff and the rest of the party are lawful and there's no real reason for this rogue to stay with them, and there's conflicts between the rogue and the rogue and the rest of the group, then talk to the DM and be like, yeah, it's time for the rogue to move on, and you can feel free to bring another character if it makes sense in the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it's okay to tap out. I mean, I've never done it. I've persisted with characters to the bitter end, but yeah, like, I think that's really important. Like, have that ongoing conversation with your team.
Yeah, and characters don't have to die for you to get, you know, to try out a new character. You can simply say, yeah, my character goes off and does this other thing, or they're leaving the party for these reasons, and then you just start a new character, and you have a whole new set of fun parameters to test out.
When your character does die, you should have a fireplace and throw that piece of paper in the fire.
Oh yeah, that was a good little ritual we used to do. Hey,
very dramatic.
Yeah.
Very dramatic.
Yeah.
I mean, I never got to partake in the ritual because I survived until the end of that campaign.
It's just because you had a fucking cloak that made you turn into ravens anytime you got hit by something.
I'm not going to lie, that was very handy.
Because you were basically a craven.
Good one.
More like
I was stark mad.
More like a coward. Oh, yeah. Anyway, I think that's where we should probably sign it off, unless somebody else has something else to say.
No,
not really.
Be good to yourself and to each other.
Cool. What I would say is to sort of sign this one out. If you want some more information, or you want to talk to any of us, mainly me, because a lot of the other guys don't have a big online social presence, feel free to get in touch with Beyond the Dice on our Facebook or Instagram, or even, you can ask questions in our Discord as well, and I will be happy to chat with you about character creation or workshop with you, because it's something that I love to do with all my players, is workshop the character, or even get them to fill out a questionnaire as well, to sort of get their characters' choices, or what they think their characters' choices would be before we begin the game. I can send that to you as well if you're a DM. And I think that we should all have a good evening or a good day wherever you are. Enjoy yourself. You know what? When you're listening to this, roll up a new character and get it ready for your next game. How about that? Thanks for listening, thanks for downloading, thanks for playing with my bicycle. Thanks for creating characters with us today on this episode, and hopefully you can roll up a character that's a little different to what people might expect. And in the on the show notes, I should say, I'll put some links to some various tools and pages and stuff that we might use when creating characters.
Yeah. And I assume you can find all those delicious links at our website. Is that right, Luke?
yes, some of them will be in a document that is on our website.
Excellent. So that website is www.beyondthedice.com. Go there if you have any questions about character creation. They might be in the links provided, or just on page.
If you
Question.
Oh.
Whoa. Mate, dude,
Travis,
have your turn
Travis.
after me.
Calm down, mate. Calm down.
I'm just going to interrupt you there, Peter.
Okay, go ahead. What questionnaire? More like questionable bear.
What?
If you would like to play maybe a bear that is curious about life and everything, maybe Luke will upload some cool random pictures on our Instagram.
I don't know what's happening. Are you okay, Peter? Do I need to come into your room?
I think he just made a character. I think he just made a character called the Questionable Bear.
He's just questioning life. He just wants to know things.
He woke up and he's like,
Why do they live in houses?
why do I have to go in the woods?
Why is there shit stuck on my ass? And where's that Instagram at, Peter?
At Beyond the Dice.
Oh my goodness. Alright, if you like the antiquated social media platform of Facebook, you can go to facebook.com/BTDpod.
Hell yeah.
We do not pay Travis enough money for his emotions.
To bleed through into the podcast.
You don't, no.
Unless
Especially
it's making fun of someone.
especially the intro and outro. But you should definitely follow my new Facebook profile, Questionable Bear.
Did you just
Sounds more like that sounds more like a Twitter account. Well, that should be.
Yeah.
At Questionable Bear. That's good.
All right.
It's so
That's
good.
that's amazing. I really hope you have a page up called that by the time this comes out.
Trav.
You've got a couple weeks.
Thanks.
And now, if you have some time after looking at some questionable bears and some articles or I should say documents and websites and stuff that I'll post up later, then please jump over to whatever podcast medium you use to listen to this show and review us, whether it's Podbean or iTunes. That's the big one. Please, if you have iTunes, do it. Please. Or Stitcher, if you listen there, feel free to review us there. It'd be absolutely awesome, because the more reviews we get, we might be bumped up on some lists, and then more people will listen because, it's easier to find us. So if you have the time, please do it and have yourself a good time.
Good night.